Hi, everybody. Um, Alan told me he had a great draw, and I see we have Elizabeth Taylor on, which is actually quite a big deal, just for you, Abbas. I want to tell everybody, thank you for joining tonight. We're reversing the order. I don't know if you knew it, but there was a debate tonight in Michigan, and Abdul was fantastic. He was just fantastic. So he's actually going to come next, and Abbas is leading off tonight, which I'm really, really pleased to have him here with us. So we're going to start with Abbas. I just want to note that Katie Costello from Abdul's campaign is on. She was the one who helped arrange this, and she wanted to express her apologies for the mix-up in the timing because we had a situation where the debate was over at 8:30, and then they're in the spin room, and so we'll get Abdul after this part is over, and he hopefully will still have a little bit of brilliance left to share with us. But I'm so pleased we're going to start with Abbas Alawieh because I got to know Abbas through the Uncommitted campaign, which was both an incredible initiative, and I know it broke your heart in the end because of the way the whole issue was played out and handled. But this is a guy who started his career as chief of staff, was with Rashida, was with Andy Levin, was with Cori Bush, and is now running for state senator. And he is just an extraordinary organizer and a very thoughtful analyst of politics and of grassroots mobilization. He was out knocking doors. He just got back in from knocking doors in time to start this call. Abbas, thanks so much for joining us tonight and for moving the schedule around because you were going to come up at 9:30, and I hope we didn't take you away from too many doors. It's kind of late to be knocking at doors anyway right now. So thanks for joining us.
9 o'clock's my cutoff, Jim. And when my wife found out that I was coming home early, she said, "Okay, well, you're going to have dinner with me, right?" I said, "No, there's this call that just got moved around." And she's like, "No, no, what call? There's no call." I said, "It's with Jim." She said, "I'll make an exception just for Jim." So she sends her
Oh,
regards.
great. And I met her and think she's just a wonderful, wonderful woman.
Very
I'm
kind.
so glad you're running. And I think it's important for you. I think it's important for Michigan. How's first, just tell me generally how the race is going.
Jim, I feel like, and I don't know if folks feel this in the chat or if everybody, the 216 folks who are on, but I feel like we're about to make history in Michigan. I really do. I feel like up and down the ballot, we are going to elect progressive champions who reject corporate PAC money and change the political landscape, both for this state and for our country as a whole. We saw what just happened. Michigan is being moved up in the order in 2028. If we can achieve wins up and down the ballot, starting with Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, starting in my campaign, then what we can do in 2028 is have a lot more leverage for regular, everyday working people. And so in my own campaign, that looks like me running to represent the community that I love and grew up in. Also, a community that oftentimes gets exploited, taken for granted. I certainly in 2024, when the genocide in Gaza, was was really top of mind for folks here locally in Dearborn and the surrounding communities that I grew up in. Didn't feel like the party was on the ground, organizing folks, listening to their pain, giving a plan for how they plan to address working families' needs here. It felt like they just sort of gave up on us. And so for me and for all of us all across the country, I think what we got to do is step up and say, we're not waiting for anybody to come save us. We're going to organize our own communities. And what that looks like for me right now, Jim, we're 8 days out or however long from, I guess almost just a week now from election day. My mom is standing at Super Greenland, okay? And my dad is at the early voting location. And so she's person by person, and my mom's been a caseworker in this community for a long time. She's an Arabic school teacher, person by person who's coming. Have you voted yet? My husband is at the early voting location. If you're going to go, he's going to tell me if you went or not. And every day she's driving out 20 new voters. It's really incredible. That's the kind of energy we need to deliver wins up and down the ballot, hopefully.
Before I get into some of the issues in this campaign, I just want to make a point follow up from what you said. I chair the ethnic council in the party, and I am I always marvel at when we don't invest in communities and then complain that we didn't get their votes. Um, and I have watched over the last decade and a half, we lost Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin legislatures across the board in huge numbers, and we stopped talking to them. And then we lose their vote, and then we blame them for not voting for us. Same thing happened with the Arab community in Michigan. Didn't go talk to them. What do you expect? And so there was a lot of frustration there. And I know that a lot of blame was heaped on you, and it was unfair because you were just saying, hey, guys, we're there. Talk to us. And nobody came. How is the community feeling now?
You know, I got to admit, Jim, it's tough because a lot of people right now in communities I'm running to represent here in southeastern Michigan. This is Senate District 2, so it's the Dearborn area, Dearborn Heights. It's also a few downriver communities, Metro Detroit communities like Taylor, Allen Park, Melvindale, and a little part of Detroit, the Warrendale area in Detroit. By and large, these are working class communities who feel the real burden of their costs going up as these giant corporations make more and more money to line their pockets. And it's hard. Folks are struggling economically. Just recently, just last week, I spent time at a senior home where folks spent 6 days without electricity. Actually, at that senior home, it was 4 days without electricity because of a storm that rolled through, and our electric monopoly failed to invest in the grid sufficiently, and so folks had to stay without electricity, in many cases water. These seniors were so scared. And I mentioned this specific story, Jim, because of the compounding crises that sometimes folks end up having to live with. One of the seniors in the senior home, where I ended up organizing a press conference with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Mayor Hammoud and others. One of these women, she stood up and was talking to the cameras about what a horrific experience it was for her as someone who had to live without power because of our electric utility monopoly failing working people. She stuttered while she was speaking. She was so scared to speak. And then afterwards, she pulled me aside and she told me in Arabic, she said, I'm so sorry I wasn't articulate, while I was talking to the press. I just lost my daughter. She's in South Lebanon and she was killed in an Israeli airstrike. And this is really, really hard for me.
Mhm.
So many people here locally, Jim, including, you mentioned the Arab American community, feel like they're between a rock and a hard place. They feel like not only, has the violence that started in, 2023, 2024 not ended, but it's gotten a lot worse. And for a lot of folks, Southern Lebanese folks, their entire villages are being destroyed, wiped off the map. And so for a lot of folks, there's a real level of disillusionment. There's nothing to be done. We thought we could do something and there's nothing to be done. But more and more, especially with the energy of Abdul's campaign, especially with the energy of my grassroots campaign here locally, with the energy of progressive waves happening all across the country, from New York to Denver, and everywhere in between, there is an increasing feeling of, okay, but maybe we can do something about it. Maybe if we embrace a politics of defending the humanity of our people here ruthlessly, insisting on investing in them here, rather than destroying families over there, then we can begin to change our country's politics. I'm seeing that more and more. I've been very encouraged with some of the early voting that's happening here in Dearborn and Dearborn Heights, more, higher numbers than I imagined initially. And I'm hoping that this will be a year where folks who are feeling that pain translate that into strengthening our voice for working people, against war, for a pro-working class agenda that delivers on the things that we know are necessary and urgent.
One of the things always baffles me is how the conventional wisdom in politics works, including among liberals, right? That um, Tim Kaine won, um, and a party leader came in one day to a meeting and said he talked about religion. We got to start talking about religion. That's the key. And so for the next couple of weeks, he was talking about religion. I finally went to him. I said, please stop.
Hmm.
Tim Kaine won because it was authentic and he talked about religion because he believed in it. You don't, and it's so obvious that you don't. Now the watchword is affordability.
Yeah.
Mamdani talked about affordability. The difference was he had a program that brought affordability. The question is, what is the program right now in the southeast corner of Michigan where you're running that you want to implement that will create a more affordable life for people in that state?
Yeah. Well, it's a few things, Jim. I'm running on working families first. That includes an agenda that delivers on, fighting for healthcare for all, for childcare as basic infrastructure. Folks need childcare to get to work like they need the roads to get to work. It is basic infrastructure. We've got to invest in childcare. I'm running on taking care of our elders, making sure we invest in elder care. The way that we can invest in that care agenda in a way that brings costs down as it relates to care. So many people, paying more for childcare than they are for their rent or a mortgage is we got to get money out of politics. That's an essential thing that is preventing our progress. And so I'm hopeful here in Michigan there is the money out of politics ballot initiative that is going to be on our ballots officially in November. My plan here personally in my own community is to win on August 4th and then turn around and organize like hell to make sure that we get that money out of politics ballot initiative over the finish line in November. The second thing, and this isn't necessarily a very sexy progressive priority necessarily, but it's local politics, Jim. I got to run on safety in our communities and road safety specifically. It is the motor city, and a lot of folks are directly impacted. And so, investing in traffic calming measures, investing in mass transit, investing in pedestrian safety, that is critical. And we've got to, as progressives, become known for making the quality of life for regular everyday folks in their own neighborhoods that much better. And I think that gives us credibility across the board when we deliver. And that's my plan to deliver. And then very importantly, Jim, we've got to protect our democracy. I mentioned the Money Out of Politics ballot initiative in November. There's also an awful initiative, and I haven't tuned into the news just the last couple of days, but there is an initiative that the right has been trying to get on our ballot for November that is a voter suppression initiative that would require immigrants or women who changed their names when they got married, et cetera, to go through additional hurdles just to be able to access the ballot box. Right now, we know that the attacks on our immigrant communities are not just attacks on our immigrant communities. They are attacks on our fundamental right to be heard and to vote. And it's not just immigrants who will be impacted by that. It's all of us. And so, I think as progressives up and down the ballot, we've got to advance an affordability agenda. But in addition to the affordability agenda that you're talking about, Jim, I'll go back to the other point that you made. I think folks really want to know that you are an authentic person. Folks are really looking for that authenticity. Recently I got to sit down with Vice President Kamala Harris, and one of the things that I mentioned to her in advocating with her that it's important that what happened in 2024 about those of us who were advocating against the war, feeling like we were iced out, that can never happen again. So I said that directly. I said, as far as my own leadership can help it, that must never happen again. I also said, as far as my own leadership can help it, I never want the experience of my own tax dollars destroying my grandmother's home ever again. My grandmother lives in Lebanon. Her home was destroyed by in an Israeli airstrike. And so I said to Vice President Harris, can you help me with that? And my advice to her and to any presidential hopeful in this country is all of us here, in this country have seen on our screens what has happened in Gaza, in Lebanon, and elsewhere with our own tax dollars support. And part of what we need to hear from our politicians, be they running for U.S. Senate, be they running for president, be they running for local office, we need to hear you speak clearly against the mass killing of children. We need to hear you speak clearly for a policy agenda that delivers, that alleviates the suffering that people right here at home are experiencing. And so, in a lot of conversations, Jim, I was on the doors today. You'd be surprised. I'm running in a community where, yes, there are a lot of Arab and Muslim Americans, but most of the folks who mention the war to me on the doors, maybe it's because they see this giant guy wearing Abbas on his shirt, but most of the folks who mention the war to me on the doors aren't Arab or Muslim folks. It's older white
Mhm.
folks, just our elders who are in their homes. And I ask them what's top of mind. They say, I have a neighbor who just had their family impacted by war, and I'm so worried about it. Why is our country prioritizing that? What's the deal with this Iran war? And so we've got to bring the politics back home. I feel like
So
Michigan
is there
is about to
any,
do that.
I mean, when we started this project that I've been working on for the last 40 something years, um, being Arab was not a good thing. Guy running for mayor in Dearborn, remember I ran on the Arab, what are we doing about the Arab problem? They
Right,
don't
right, right.
share our values and they're ruining our darn good way of life, he said. Um, are you seeing any of that? Have we crossed that bridge?
I mean, certainly, racism and bias exists wherever.
Well, let me
And
just make a
so,
point. Folks, if you have a question for Abbas, put it in the
yep,
chat and we'll be picking them up and responding to them as we go on before Abdul joins us. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
please, I'm happy to answer. And one of the questions that I saw in the chat, by the way, is about reaching out to Black Detroiters, which is an issue. This is a really critical point, and I'll just mention this, Jim, because sure, bias exists against any minority group in our country,
Mhm.
communities of color, immigrant communities, and certainly that exists. It's just objectively harder for someone named Abbas to run and win without making sure that we get our message out there about our shared humanity. And so, a lot of the organizing that I've been personally doing over the last 2 years, especially since the 2024 election, has been in deepening our organizing and our joint struggle right here in Metro Detroit, especially among working class communities, especially among Arab and Black communities right here in Metro Detroit. Because, and the reason why this is important to me is I mean, I grew up 3 blocks away from Detroit, Jim. Southeastern Michigan is a very segregated place, very segregated place. So that meant that when I would go around the block, right, our side, of Tireman, which is the street that divides Detroit and Dearborn, right there, where I grew up. The side I grew up on was all Arabs. The other side was all Black folks. But what I was conditioned to do growing up was you don't cross Tireman. It's like it's dangerous on the other side. I got to be old enough to cross that road and realize, oh, this is the same thing. It looks just like my side of the neighborhood. It's just there are those hard divisions. So unless we organize, unless we show up for each other, unless we deepen our relationships with one another, and this is very important, not just during election years, not just during presidential election years where tensions are high and the national parties are pitting us against each other to try and exploit divisions, then we're going to continue to experience a disconnectedness in our politics. I think we have a lot of work to do as progressives. Certainly, I feel it as an Arab American and Muslim American leader to not have that piece of it of our solidarity with Black Americans, with Black American voters, with Black American leaders be a secondary strategy. We've got to lead with that, and so a lot of our organizing here locally is centered on exactly that, and it's got to be for us to move forward here.
Sounds like lessons I learned from the Jesse Jackson campaigns in 84 and 88, where he truly built a rainbow that
Um,
worked. And I remember one time he was in Southeast um, DC, and he made the point. He said, people from Northwest Washington have never been here. And we went and asked audiences, never, I mean, that you think of one city, but you can't even imagine the other side because you just don't even, nobody goes there. And people from Southeast never come to the other side. That's in the nation's capital.
right.
So I think that's a really important observations to bring people together. Tell me more about the agenda and what a state legislator can do
Mm.
um, to make real change happen.
Happy to. I did see Alan's hand up. Alan, did you have
Oh,
anything?
Alan, yeah, you got something?
Yeah, well, I'm fielding questions here, and I'll chime in when we get
Yeah,
questions
let's
in the
do them.
chat. And just to accent Jim's question, because someone framed that issue as what do you think your capacity is to, as a state senator, to address what will be a deficit of money coming in from the federal government for federal programs that are being cut
Oh,
by Trump?
Phil. It's tough. These are very tough questions, and I think they're going to require, um, you know, they're going to require the kind of organizing and coalition building and getting creative and governing that hopefully I can help bring to the Michigan State Legislature as a state senator if we're able to win, which I feel very confident about because we're knocking these doors for and not taking anything for granted this next week. Let's just think for a moment, in Michigan, what we are up against. We've got, 7 days left here on the ground. Democrats currently control the state Senate and the governor's mansion, but not the House. We have, I think we are in a decent position to where Democrats can retain control of the state Senate and potentially take back the House and win the governor's race, which is an urgent priority. John James is the front runner on the Republican side and would be awful for our state and our country. With that, if we are able to retain a trifecta, there is a good amount that we can do very quickly. I really believe that, especially since I think for the first time, probably, I don't know, someone's got to look up the history, but Jocelyn Benson is poised to win, and Jocelyn Benson in this race isn't taking any corporate money. That is a really significant, development here. The things that we as progressives have been able to accomplish elsewhere in this country, like childcare for all, I think is something that we can move on very quickly. Early on in her tenure, especially given that that's one of the things that she is running on. Another urgent priority locally that can help us bring down costs is going to be addressing the electric utilities head on. Right now, the way that the law is written in Michigan, basically, there is a rubber stamp approval process that happens where the utilities get to go to the Michigan Public Service Commission and request a rate increase. And more often than not, it's approved. Now, the mechanism for requesting or for the rates being decreased is virtually non-existent. And so we've got to be able to tie our rates to reliability so that if the reliability is awful and there's a 20-minute storm that knocks out power for the folks all across our region, that we don't have to keep paying the enormously high rates that essentially are just lining the pockets of these utilities companies. And so, there are things that we can do even as the federal government landscape is increasingly difficult and we're getting less money. There are things that we can do tangibly to lower costs for working people by meaningfully holding accountable those corporate actors that are making a ton of money on the backs of working people. That we could just start there and still succeed at lowering costs, but while also, of course, advocating vigorously with our federal partners and champions. Hopefully, one of them will be U.S. Senator Abdul El-Sayed to ensure that we're fighting like hell to bring more resources down from the federal government.
Who is now on with us. Hey, Abdul. Listen, Abbas, before I let you go, and I know you're going to stick around, would you put in the chat your campaign data so that people know how to get in touch with you? And I'm going to make
Yes.
a contribution. This is not because you're on. I just wanted to let you know that I want to support you. I've already supported you. I'm going to support you a little bit more. And anybody, if you want to donate to the campaign, please do. This is a remarkable young man who's got an incredible future, and we're so proud of him. Thank you, Abbas, for joining us. Abdul, thanks for coming in. I know it was a rough night with the with the debate, but I got to tell you, it was a rougher night for your opponent in the debate tonight. You were
Yeah, I was
you
gonna
were
say I felt pretty good about it.
you were brilliant, and your opponent wasn't. But hey, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're on your way to something else, and I thank you for taking the time. I want to start with a question, if you don't mind, that keeps coming up, and that is this issue of electability. Um, I've long believed that nothing doesn't win, something does. And there has to be a difference. And you clearly have defined issues in a significant way. And the polls show that you best Mike Rogers in every contest. Talk to me a little about how that issue comes up, how it's used against you, and how you respond to it.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate first you hosting and Jim, thank you for allowing me to come on and pop off in the time frame that I've got. But this question about electability it's a term that that folks who don't want to see our party change can use to point to unsaid stereotypes about certain people and then dictate that they should not be able to win. And it's funny because this argument has been made about me, for reasons that nobody wants to say, that probably have a lot more to do with the way I pray or the color of my skin or my family immigrated from, than has to do with what we actually see on the ground. And then you have polling evidence that shows that not only am I electable, but the most electable in the field, and then of electability against me because, of course, the stereotype does not change even if the data does. The reality of it is this, is that electability is about being able to inspire a movement of people to come out and be a part of something. And what's ironic in this race is that I'm not the one who's inviting $60 million of money from big corporations and AIPAC to come into this race and try to buy it for me. Like, if you need big corporations and AIPAC to buy an election for you, by definition, you're not electable on your own terms. But of course, like the idea gets thrown around. So it is what it is. And I think, yet again, we have an opportunity to prove this electability argument wrong. But I have to remind you, I come from the state that elected Barack Hussein Obama twice.
And Jesse Jackson, incidentally.
And Jesse Jackson is right, in 88. We have a long
Yes.
history of bucking the quote-unquote electability trend, but it does not stop usually people from D.C. And sometimes New York pointing at the state and being like, well, that's fundamentally unelectable because don't you all see his name's Abdul?
And he's taken positions that are different than everybody else's. It's as if the grayer a candidate you are, the more electable they think you are, which is what they call moderate. And moderate means I don't really stand for anything right now. And I'm not quite sure that really wins.
I mean, that's the thing, is that an election is an exercise in contrasts.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anything to contrast yourself with your opponent, then at some point the question becomes, how do you differentiate yourself? I mean, in my race, you've got DTE, Blue Cross, Big Tech, Big Pharma. You've got AIPAC. They're interested in supporting and are supporting actively both opponents. So how do you draw a contrast between you and the other, like the color blue versus the color red, the D versus the R? Those things only go so far if you can't actually articulate differences in real policy. And so I just, I don't take corporate money for a reason, because I actually want to deliver for everyday people. I want to be able to actually fight for working people and alongside them, rather than be owed or have or ask the corporations to owe the corporations the favor back in return when I'm in the Senate.
Talk to me about the priorities in this race. I've heard you speak so eloquently about healthcare for all. I mean, as a right, not a privilege. My wife was in Ireland with me about 7 years ago, and she had an attack. The ambulance came, they took her to the hospital, kept her overnight, did tests on her. We got a bill for $100. And
Imagine that.
I thought if that had been the United States, I would have been sunk. But that sense of you're a human being and you have a need, I got to take care of you, is just lost in this whole process. And we've done it. We passed healthcare reform, healthcare insurance reform that pays the insurance companies but doesn't do much to help consumers. Talk a little about what Medicare for all would look like, what universal healthcare would look like.
Yeah, I'm running to get money out of politics so we can get money back in pockets past Medicare for all. And Medicare for all, I just want folks to imagine, if you have private health insurance, you likely have a insurance card in your back pocket. That insurance card you probably pay $1,000 to $2,000 a month between you and your employer for. And then there's a deductible, which is the money you have to pay to get the health insurance you already thought you paid for. Then there's the copay, the co-insurance, and there's a network. You can't just see any doctor. You are gatekept because your insurance has to have a sweetheart deal with whatever the hospital or clinic is that you want to go see. Medicare for All would mean that you have another card that you get the day you're born, that does not expire, that does not go away if you turn 26 or get married or get divorced or get a job or lose a job or turn 65. There is no network, in network or out of network. There's no copay and there's no deductible. Imagine the security of that. If you get sick, you get to go and get the healthcare you need and deserve. Now, the crazy thing about it is they tell us, well, you can't possibly do that. Well, why couldn't we? We're the richest, most powerful country in the world. We're the greatest country in the world. Why couldn't we do that? Well, the reason is ultimately because the priority set for most of our politicians is to send our money in the form of foreign wars to other governments, right, to drop bombs or to cut taxes for the richest and most powerful corporations and billionaires instead of doing this thing. Like, we can do it. We just have to choose to do it. It's a political priority that we have to do it, because it doesn't matter anymore. Like, you know, when we used to talk about health reform, it was implicitly a conversation about how do you provide healthcare for low-income people. And that should be important enough on its own terms. But today, there's nobody you talk to. Like, I talk to doctors who are like, if I got sick, like, it would really, really hurt me. I'm like, you work in the healthcare system. How? You make $100,000, hundreds of thousands of dollars. How? Well, it's because the system has gotten so porous and the out-of-pocket costs are so high that everybody's worried about it. And if it's a problem for everybody, then it's a political problem we can solve. And I think we need to get on to solve it, but we need to have politicians who have the courage and are not taking money from the corporations who benefit off the system as it stands.
One big issue that your campaign has raised that is certainly a big one that we have to raise countrywide, and that's the question of dark money and of independent expenditures and of super PACs. There's a chart your campaign put out, almost 60 million for your opponent raised against you from these super PACs and dark money sources. I have an idea that was given to me by somebody who'd worked with Elizabeth Warren back in her race against Brown. If you win, will you take a pledge to not take dark money and encourage only on the condition that your opponent refuses to take dark money? So that we have a race in Michigan for the Senate where nobody takes dark money. And if he takes it, then all bets are off.
He'll never say yes because his entire campaign is a dark money campaign. That's how he's run all his campaigns. But look, I'd be happy to do it. I mean, look, it's not very fun to get $60 million spent against you. The experience is that anytime anybody turns on a television in Michigan, you're going to see not one, but probably 2 or 3 attack ads against me in a given commercial break. That's the experience. It's the experience of your kid being asked at camp about whether or not her dad is disrespectful to women because he wrote an op-ed 15 years ago criticizing the Let's Move campaign. That's the experience of it. So gladly, I'd love to. And ask yourself in this primary, if there was no outside spending, would it even be a competitive race?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, and that is exactly why we got to get money out of politics. Because you can have corporations and special interests truck money into a state, try to pick their senator, who by definition is going to pay back the pro quo for the quid. And when it's $60 million, that's a lot of quid to pro quo.
I never heard anybody parse it out in a sentence that way. Thank you. Alan, we got questions here?
Yeah, we do. One was about in the Senate, given the Democratic leadership, and of course we saw the 40-7 vote supporting taking more of an anti-war stance than we'd seen previously. But in the Senate, what would be your strategy to do as much as possible to end the wars, specifically right now in the Middle East that the United States is funding or directly participating in, given the opposition to your position and our position here from Democratic leadership? How would you perhaps also petition leadership to change their opinion?
Well, God willing, I will be elected in a majority, and God willing, our next majority leader will be Chris Van Hollen. And Senator Van Hollen will lead the effort, I believe, to pass the kind of war powers resolution that we need and to block funding for a war that is illegal on its own terms. But I think we got to go a step further. Like, ask yourself what the origin story of this war is. Nobody seems to want to talk about it. Like, the prime minister of foreign government came to the American Situation Room and pitched a president on a war that he had pitched to every president for the past 40 years on. And he finally found a president dumb enough to do it. And now we're stuck in this war that nobody can get out of because, of course, we just taught the Ayatollahs that they have a chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, was a 3-word statement nobody had ever heard of before that. But now you got to pay attention to it because it's going to dictate your gas price, right? So now we're paying what, $5 gas, and for what? And there's no way out. So I think we need Senate action. Now, step back. Why is it that too many, even Democrats, aren't willing to actually speak about the fact that this war is not just illegal, it's immoral? Well, that's the impact of AIPAC in our politics, because AIPAC has wanted this war. Don't forget, when President Obama was finally sealing the deal on the JCPOA, which was the previous deal that we'd had with Iran, AIPAC was the principal opposition to it. And now AIPAC is making sure that we are a reliable ally to a country that's now using this war to annex southern Lebanon. So, at the end of the day, like, the thing about politics is when you have a bipartisan consensus that is different from a public consensus, meaning the public believes one thing, but both parties believe a different thing. The difference is usually somebody's money. You asked me about healthcare. The difference is pharma money. The difference is big insurance money. The difference is big healthcare money. And in this case, the difference is AIPAC money. The public does not want this war, but politicians aren't willing to drive it to a conclusion. And the reason why, well, goes back to the money spent in races like mine. People don't want to get $30 million dropped on their face. Attack ad after attack ad, saying terrible things about them on the flimsiest possible evidence. But because you can pay this much money to do it, right, you can just force it into people's eyeballs and eardrums.
That's part of the issue here that is I think needs to be thought about, is that you made the point that the groups that are putting the 60 million into your campaign are also supporting Mike Rogers. So the idea that Haley Stevens raises, that if she wins, she has a better chance. The point is, where will that dark money go? It probably will migrate from her campaign to his campaign because he's a more reliable ally. And I think
AIPAC's not going to be done with me in the primary. And I just want to be clear about this. But here's the thing about it, right? If we prove that we can beat $60 million in a primary, all they're doing is getting me ready for a general, where there's going to be a ton of outside money anyway, right? Yeah. Like, the irony about this is that AIPAC's going to mess around and turn me into David, takes out Goliath. Mm-hmm. So, you can spend all your money. This is the point that I keep making to AIPAC, and I'm sure they're listening. Somebody's going to leak this audio because that's what they do nowadays, right? AIPAC, if you're listening, burn your money. Come back, burn it again in the general. I'm happy to burn your money for you. And then we can get on to the business of governing and asking whether or not our foreign policy ought to be dictated to us by the interests of a foreign government, any foreign government, right? Everybody, wants to, it's not, to me, it's a principle question. Like, I don't think our tax dollars should be spent to provide guns and tanks and bombs for the government of Egypt either, that's where my family came from, right? Or Saudi Arabia or Qatar. I don't pay my tax dollars so that other countries get bombs and tanks. I think all of us pay our tax dollars so that our kids get good schools and functional infrastructure. And this is about principle at the end of the day. But like, this money is our taxpayer dollars, $3.3 billion. Just last week, right? We saw the pro quo on the quid, right? A vote to send $3.3 billion of our taxpayer dollars. And it's crazy to me because I know that the Congresswoman has seen the same things I have. You can go to schools in Detroit or Ypsilanti or in Flint, and those schools look like they did 50 years ago. There's a $1.3 billion gap in Detroit public schools alone in terms of infrastructure improvements. Why don't we just keep that money here? And I don't know, I'd love to see kids going to good schools instead of bombing schools on the other side.
It's a point you've made that bears repeating, and that is, when it comes to 95 billion for the war, nobody asks the question. But when you raise that 95 billion for healthcare or education or infrastructure, they say, how are we going to pay for it? Where's the money going to come from? It's a question of priorities, and you've been raising them.
This is a question: who do we want to be? It's funny, people want to frame this whole race as being about Israel. It's not. It's about Michigan. I'm a doctor twice over. I my whole work, all my work, has been rebuilding health departments and understanding what kills moms and babies and putting glasses on kids and taking on corporate polluters and eliminating medical debt. I wrote a book on guaranteeing healthcare through Medicare for all. And everyone's like, "Oh, well, he's running on Israel." No, I'm running because whatever you think about Israel, they don't have a right to our tax dollars. We have a right to our tax dollars. And I've been in.
I think we lost connection for a second with Dr. Abdul.
I'm hearing.
Um,
Katie, are you there? Oh, here he is. You're back. We lost you there for a minute. In case it happens again, would you do me a favor and have Katie put in the chat your campaign information and a button? And I want to send you something tonight, and I know others are going to want to contribute too.
I appreciate you. And I think we got time for about one more question. I do have
One
to
more
jump
question.
off.
Alan,
Forgive me for that.
what you got?
well, we had something for both Abbas and
Oh,
Abdul.
thanks. I see Katie put it in the chat now.
For Abbas and Abdul, which is just about what they would do for people with disabilities when elected. And we've also had a question, maybe more for Abbas, around the nuclear reactor. And yeah, so those questions, and then just summary, but also to let everybody know too, we're on the platform of Progressive Democrats of America federal PAC. We've endorsed Abdul El-Sayed, and locally we will seek and attain an endorsement for Abbas Alawieh. But please donate to Abdul's campaign. We have endorsed him, and we want everybody to support Abdul's campaign and Abbas and get 2 victories here. Take it away, though, and thank you so much again for joining us, Abdul.
Thank you, Alan.
Go for it.
No, so
Abdul, you go first. Yeah.
when it comes to disability justice, we have a responsibility in this country to make sure that we're thinking proactively about the rights of folks with disabilities rather than requiring them to sue for their rights in the first place, which is the one central premise that I take issue with when it comes to the ADA, is that you've got to sue for your rights rather than us thinking proactively about how we make sure that we are building a world and an America that is accommodating of people with disabilities. Second key point is that we still have yet to meet IDEA funding responsibilities. We need to do that. We need to do that quickly as a function of being able to provide high quality education for all of our kids. And then third, when you think about the way that they've gutted public health in this country, ask yourself who is most likely to be harmed the most by it. And I think we need to rebuild our public health infrastructure around being able to prevent disease. It's a crazy thing. I mean, I'm sitting here in Michigan, and for the last 3 weeks, we've been dodging lettuce. We can barely breathe. And like that feels to me a lot more like the summers I spent in Egypt than it does in the United States. Worried about air quality and dodging lettuce in the United States of America. And if you're somebody who lives with disability, the impact of that is substantially worse for you in so many different ways. And so I think it's just critical for us to be rebuilding that infrastructure and rebuilding it in a way, thinking about how we wrap around the needs of people with disabilities. And so I just really, really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all tonight. Look, we've got 8 days left in this campaign for the primary. August 4th is our day. If you can support us, please do click on the link. We need your support. If you're interested in phone banking, we're doing that too. Go to abdulforsenate.com. You can also just follow us on social media, share our stuff. But we're building a campaign on the joy and the hope of what we can have if we get money out of politics to put money back in pockets and pass Medicare for all. I encourage all of you all to be a part of it. And James or Jim, not Jim. It's always written James. I'm like, who's James? I know Jim. Jim and Alan. I'm so grateful to be with you guys. I think 2 days in a row, and honored to get to join you. And as I said, Jim, yesterday, like we stand on the shoulders of giants. You've been fighting this fight for a very, very long time, my friend, and grateful for the fight that you fought, Alan. Thank you so much for your advocacy and your leadership, and honored to be with you all.
Let me just say, Abdul, before you go, that to folks listening in and watching this right now, this is one of the most important races I think we've got this year, period. Winning this primary is decisive, I think, in terms of progressive politics. And I couldn't think of a better person to carry the standard than you, Abdul. And I thank you for what you've done, the sacrifices you've made with your family. And we are going to do everything we can. Please contribute to this campaign tonight. Let's bring them over the finish line, because it's us who are doing it, not big corporations.
Hey, Jim, and just I'm very happy to
convey
this piece of news to Abdul. in a Fox poll. Oh, I think he left, but in the Fox, oh, there you are. In a Fox poll of the debate, you have 96% of the people think you won the debate, 4% for Haley Stevens. So that's an online poll
Well,
right now. So,
I want to meet
well,
those 4%. But thank you. Thanks,
well,
Abdul.
I'm grateful,
Abbas.
and I also just want to give ups to Abbas running a strong campaign, and Abbas is my younger brother who I look up to because he's like literally like a foot and a half taller than I am. So I just want to give ups to him running a strong campaign. But thank you all so much. I appreciate you, and we'll see you guys soon. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Take care, man. Bye-bye. Hey, Abbas, you're on mute. Unmute.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there you are. You heard the question that Alan asked about
So
disability education.
on disability justice, I mean, there's disability justice is one of those areas of policy that I think we have. It can't be its own area of policy. It's got to be a thread throughout. So if we're talking about transportation policy, if we're talking about education policy, if we're talking about healthcare policy, disability justice has to be at the center of that. Certainly, if we think of education in Michigan, for example, uh, uh, our education system, our investment in our education system has been lagging behind so much that Michigan ranks 44th in terms of whether or not it's keeping up with investing in properly in education. We know that when there is a lack of investment, the first folks who pay the price for that are folks who are most vulnerable. Certainly, folks with disabilities are at the center of that. And so, in the public school that I grew up in, for example, when I graduated, there was 2,400 kids, 2,500 kids in that school. Now it's less than 2,000 kids. So that school is getting less money, even though the services for folks with disabilities in that school that hasn't shrunk, but a lot more students have left due to some of these private virtual schools that are preying on some of these kids here locally. And Michigan is a whole big problem that we're dealing with locally. But point being, we've got to fight for education funding to ensure that our students with disabilities are taken care of. We've got to fight like hell to oppose any rollbacks on Medicaid, because we know that folks with disabilities are the first who are impacted when when attacks on Medicaid occur. And it's got to be a thread throughout when we're thinking about our infrastructure, the livability of our communities, and by and large, a pro-economic justice agenda has to center disability justice, and so it's got to be a priority for us.
Thank you, Abbas. He said about how he looks up to you. I look up to you too. And it's not just the size; it's the leadership you've demonstrated, and
You're
your
very
your
kind, Jim.
your kindness and thoughtfulness, and how you deal with issues and deal with people, which is so important. And I'm looking at these two races as just two really significant steps forward. I think back to where my community was 50 years ago and where we are today, and it's people like you and the leadership you showed in the past and what you're doing right now and what you're going to do in the future. And it's Abdul that make me so proud to be an Arab American, and the fruits of what we've been doing for the last many years are now being seen right in front of our eyes. And Alan, I've been with you for forever,
yes.
since back when PDA was first started, and I really want to thank the role that you're playing and that your organization is playing in bringing progressives together. I think we're at a turning point. I had a meeting, just a side note, with Bernie week or so ago. We were on the phone first and talking about, did we ever think 50 years ago when we started in this that we'd be where we are today? And we're both feeling like a certain amount of pride in the steps forward. And then he said something that for me was very thoughtful, very profound. He said, I know that for both of us, he said, but in your case, it took 70,000 people to be killed to get to the point where we are, and that's a damn shame. And it really is a damn shame but people have awakened and are thinking about issues that I care about, as well as the issues of the country. I've been with Jackson since the 80s. Progressiveness is in my core. It's part of my being. But it was always everything but this issue, but now it's part of the package. and you and Abdul bring it together in so many important ways. And PDA has always been there. And I thank you very much for hosting this. And thanks to so many of you who signed up tonight and came on. Please support both campaigns. It's important that you do and that we get behind them. Thank you very much. Alan, do you have any final words?
Well, no, just if Abbas has time, we have one and maybe a
Oh,
second.
sure.
Yeah. A very specific question, and I suppose because I know that the person asked it to Dr. El-Sayed on yesterday's call, but about a nuclear reactor and Palisades, I think it is your position on that, and then your general thoughts about Michigan and the necessity of addressing the climate. Obviously, Michigan's got a very key industry there in terms of addressing the climate crisis and how, as a state senator, you can push forward on all those fronts.
Yeah, they're both critical issues. I'm not familiar with the nuclear reactor in the Palisades. Can you say just a word on
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, he wrote a long thing. He said, well, I'll read it just word for word. Will you join opposition to Holtec's zombie atomic reactor restart at Palisades in Southwest Michigan? So obviously not in your district. It is unprecedented, unneeded, insanely expensive for the public, and extremely high risk for health, safety, security, and the environment. And that was in the chat. So it's
Okay.
about the restart of that reactor.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, it's not something I've been following, but certainly sounds extremely concerning. And I think, I'm happy to get educated on it right after this and share more of a robust position. But, the rate at which we need to be transitioning to and investing in renewable energy all across our state and all across our country is rapid, and where we are right now is woefully behind. And so, every time they want to impose upon us a false solution, saying, "Oh, we just got to get this right now. We'll talk about renewables later." We know that that is a false choice. That we do have the opportunity, the chance, especially if we are able to get governing majorities to push from the inside for massive investments in affordable renewable energy. And so that's certainly something I want to champion here in the state. I also sort of broadly will say, on the issue of our climate crisis, our climate emergency, here locally, we're feeling it, with the increase of extreme weather events becoming just a part of our everyday life, with not being able to go outside last week because of the smoke. It was so awful that it wasn't just like, that you can't step outside if you are part of a specific vulnerable community. No, it wasn't recommended that anybody be outside. This is going to continue happening unless we prioritize a pro climate agenda at every level of government. Certainly, one of the pushes here locally has been against these data centers that they want to put in our backyards, with with no plan for what happens when these diesel generators that are powering these things pump toxic fumes into the air of local communities that already have to deal with the burden of air pollution from industry for decades. And so we have to be really serious and rigorous about how we are opposing every one of these projects as they come up. There was one that was proposed in the backyard of residents here in Allen Park, in the community that I'm running to represent. I've been organizing against that data center for the entirety of my campaign, and recently, Allen Park residents actually won a moratorium that's going to the city council, but they stopped that specific proposal and won a moratorium. And I think in that time, we can't just sit on our hands. We can't just say, okay, hopefully there will be a moratorium, and then in the meantime, they're building all of these things, and we don't get a say. We've got to, wherever we are, organize alongside our communities to, in cases where we can defeat a data center being built in our backyards, we got to defeat those. And in instances where a data center is moving forward, we've got to make sure that we are at the table. And I do think we need a moratorium for now. But for any instance where there's a data center moving forward, we need real answers. We've got to demand real answers. We've got to push back on these local elected officials who are signing NDAs with these companies, who won't even tell us what the deal is. We need real answers about what it's going to mean for our air, what it's going to mean for our water, what it's going to mean for the reliability of our electrical grid, what it's going to mean for our utility bills that are already sky high. These are the kinds of questions we're going to need to vigorously pursue, and it's a part of our fight for climate justice. And so, it's certainly one of the fights that's top of mind as it relates to climate justice, as you were asking about, Alan.
Thanks, Abbas. Do me a favor, one more time, put your donate information in the chat. Katie, you've
Thanks.
done it a number of times, I see, and I really thank you for doing that, making it easy. And please, folks, don't hang up until you look at the chat, copy those addresses down, make a donation to both campaigns. It's important that you do. I want to wake up August 5th with a sense that we've just made history and we've just elected the both of you. And I don't want to wake up and say, God, if only I'd done a little bit more. I want to see what we can do to make it happen. So thank you, man. And Katie, thank you for helping make this happen tonight. Let's push to the finish line here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all so much. Alan, sending you love. Jim, sending you love. Sending love to every single person on this call. We're gonna make history in Michigan next week. We gotta make the most of every one of the next 7 days. Every one of us has a role to play. So hop on the phones, make a contribution, whatever it is. Support PDA. We've got this, and I can't wait to celebrate next Tuesday night.
I'll have you back again. Take care, man. Thanks. Thank you, Alan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Wow. Well, I will.